Hello everyone, welcome to Economics Juncture. Today we'll see balanced growth theory, in development economics. So this is part A of it. One more part will follow to this subsequently. Right. So let's see what this theory has to offer. So actually, several authors interpreted this theory in their own ways. It was advocated by Rodden, followed by Ragnar Nurse, and then Arthur Lewis. So we'll see one by one their interpretation. So views of Rodden. So actually, he published his work in an article in 1943, in which he stated that social marginal product of an investment is different from its private marginal product, right? So what he means by that, so is that if different industries are planned according to their social marginal product, then growth would be greater than, mind you, greater than, as per Rodden, uh, as compared to when they are planned according to their private marginal product. And the reasoning behind it was given by Rodden as the complementarity of different industries, right? And he explained it with a very famous example of shoe industries. For example, he illustrated that if a large shoe factory is established in a region where around 10,000 workers are employed. So what happens is that we have one shoe industry, but the problem arises uh, is that the workers don't have a lot of choice to buy, right? So they are not provided with enough choice. So all they can buy is that shoe, right? So they are the only consumer to it. So he suggested that instead of that, if a series of industries are started, in that case, the demand for their output will increase via multiplier process, right? So just instead of the shoe industry, if we have, let's say, food processing industries and various, let's say, electronics industries and other industries, let's say XYZ industry. So then, he suggested that the output would increase via multiplier process because now the workers have more choices, right? So they can spend their income in these industries, and it is likely that they will buy more, instead of buying just shoe, because you know their demand function corresponds to uh, buying more different commodities bundle, right? So now we'll see what were the views of Ragnar Nurse, and it was a more elaborated, kind of interpretation. So Professor Nurse has given a proper explanation of the theory of balanced growth, right? So as per him, okay, so his theory was majorly focused on underdeveloped countries, right? So his interpretation, you would see that it is focused on underdeveloped countries and how they'll get rid of the vicious cycle of poverty. So he explained it, the virtuous cycle of poverty, that the underdeveloped countries have low income, which translate into low demand because income is low. So which mean that because there is low demand in the market, so there would be low investment. Now, since investment would be low, the capital formation would remain less, and this would lead to low productivity. Now, because of low productivity, income would remain low, and this cycle will continue, right? So this is the same thing written in different ways. So low income would lead to low saving, would lead to low investment, uh, which would translate into less production, which would mean low income and therefore low demand, right? So in other words, he was saying that it would result in a small market and limiting the extent of the market, right? Now, what is more important is that how to break this vicious cycle. So, you know, Ragnar Nurks explain it through both the side. He, uh, you know, says that supply and demand, both the side have equal role to play and will have to, strike that balance in order to get out of this vicious cycle, right? So same thing is written. So we need to see it from both demand and supply side if the vicious cycle has to be broken. So the problem arises is that the vicious cycle of poverty affects the demand side of capital formation. So the capital formation thing is affected. In underdeveloped countries which are poor, uh, there's low level of income which translates into low demand, right? So also when you see about private sector, so A, they don't have much opportunity to invest in because demand is less, and B, they don't have even enough capacity or capability to invest uh, because they are not that huge giant kind of in you know sector, right? So when we see it from supply side, so same things come in. We have low income, which leads to a small market size, uh, which leads to low investment because the market size is small. So private sectors are not induced to invest heavily, and which leads to low productivity and which leads to low income, right? So what UDC can do is that they can resort to capital formation and accelerate the pace of economic development. Now we'll see, how Ragnar Nurse has suggested that government should intervene in there and, you know, play the role, act as a bridge because, the private sector is missing. So, can invest and, you know, be a part of the production process, right? We'll see. So, the method which are suggested to overcome this vicious cycle of poverty, there were four methods primarily which he suggested. One is to create complementary demand. Now, how to do it? Because the problem is that, with only one industry, if you have, you cannot broke this vicious cycle of poverty by making investment into that. So, you need, you know, several industries. So this is the only way to enlarge the market actually, right? So again, he used that shoe example and he elaborate on it. So he testifies that the investment in shoe industry won't lead to sufficient demand. So what we need is a overall investment so that the labor of one industry, mind you, is the consumer of others, right? So again, the same example. So instead of just shoe industry, we start several other industries, right? So we have the market side increases and the labor uh, can be customer of all the industries instead of just one, right? The other method which was suggested was external economy. So Ragnar say that external economies are those which increases over a period of time because of setting up of new industry or expansion of the existing industry. So what happened is, most importantly, that this leads to increasing return to a scale. Now we'll see it how you know it will break that cycle. So with increasing return to a scale, what happens is that so it leads to fall in the cost of production. So if I can draw a diagram, so it's not very proper, but it would be enough to understand you if a marginal cost is taken on y-axis and quantity is taken on x-axis. So it will have this parabola say. So as the more of the quantity is produced, you'll see the marginal cost would decrease. Now, as cost would decrease, if I can again draw it on uh, a demand curve, so price on y-axis and quantity produced on x-axis. So as cost is decreasing, the price of item would decrease. So this would translate into decrease in price level. So if price level decrease, so our demand curve DD tells us that the quantity demand would increase. Now, as the demand rises, it is very useful for economic development. Uh, you know, you must be knowing it from the Keynes explanation, right? Now, the third method, which comes across is government intervention, which we have seen, how he suggested the government to intervene because private sector does not have enough capacity, or you know even the motivation is lacking in underdeveloped countries. So in underdeveloped countries, the government must come forward and participate in production activities, so as to break the virtuous cycle, because private entrepreneurs cannot come forward with so heavy investment, right? And then the uh, fourth point which was suggested was economic growth, right? So balanced growth helps in accelerating the pace of economic growth. So once you start getting the growth, it removes the stationary equilibrium of underdevelopment, right? So these were the four methods suggested by NERS to overcome that virtuous cycle of poverty. Now we'll stop here, and you know we haven't yet completed it, and I think one more lecture will do it for us. Thank you.